again, it's memory time. That's the only way you can get at this, except to remember, you know, there's, well, I don't want to say it, but to remember, there's no hydros on any of these. Lower and higher, the us and the ik, so there are some patterns. It's just, you have to know what exists. Now, let's take this one, because I didn't want to have to repeat and use every halogen up there. If this were bromine, you would have HBRO, HBRO2, HBRO3, and so forth. What you would do is come over here and make an adjustment, and you would say hypobromous acid, bromous acid, bromic acid, perbromic acid. So follow the pattern. Yeah.
Is it only that 7A family that you do that?
Yes, that you have 4.
Okay.
Yeah, only. Now, if you look in your text, they have a lot more acids than this. So I have selected the most common and the ones that you'll be running into. So those are just flat out need to know.
So these are, but if on the test, will we have anything a little bit different? And we can just
Well, I could throw in bromine in here, or I could throw in iodine, but you follow the pattern. If you know this series, then you're fine. You are holding up amazingly well. Usually by this time, people look like deer in headlights, or their eyes are rolling back, or if you're old enough to have ever seen, let's see, what was that? Laugh-In? There was this little old guy, Mel Gibson, used to sit on a park bench, dressed up like an old man, and when he got overwhelmed, he'd fall off the park bench. Sometimes my students look like they're ready to fall out of their desk. Okay, so, nomenclature. One last thing. Those were the ternary acids that you're responsible for. One last category, ternary salts. What we do to make our ternary salts, and I'm going to have a list over here, and these, what I'm going to write here, is also on that list in your book. Let me go back to that first acid, that first ternary acid. I'm going to take the hydrogens away. Okay, it's an acid right now, but if I would take the hydrogens away and substitute in a metal, I could turn that into a salt. So I want to take the hydrogens away. What's the charge on one hydrogen? +1. So if I have 2 hydrogens here, what must be the charge on this group? -2, exactly, good. And that's a polyatomic ion. Now let's do it with the next one. I'm going to take the hydrogens away. Tell me what the charge would be. -2 again. Okay, I'm going to go to the next one. I'm going to take the 1 hydrogen away. So this polyatomic ion would be carrying what charge? -1, good. If I do the next one, I take the hydrogen away. What's the charge? -1. Does everybody see that? I see some slightly furrowed brows. Let me come over here. We have positive, negative, because in our compounds, there's only going to be 1 positive and 1 negative. If you're getting more than the 2 things, you have split apart a polyatomic ion that is joined together. So, hydrogen we know to be +1, and I have 2 of them. You can also do your double cross up, but you got to treat that as a unit. Well, this is understood to be a 1. The 2 comes over there, it becomes -2. So, for those of you with furrowed brows, did that do it? Okay, let's go back. Yeah.
So is that how we know what the charge of the SF3
Yeah.
is and the 2s?
If you know that, then you can get this. The alternative is flashcards with these guys. Okay, now we've got the first 2. Let's go for this. CO3. The charge on that would be what? Shout it out. -2. Then I've got PO3, -3, and PO4, -3. And then we have ClO, ClO2, ClO3, ClO4. What would the charge on every one of those be?
All negative.
All -1. Now, they got names. And we got some new names that we haven't stumbled into before. Lower and higher. Sulfite, sulfate. Ite is the lower, ate is the higher. Okay, sulfite, sulfate. Sulfites. You may have heard of those before. Sometimes in restaurants, the salad bar especially, will have a sign up. Some of these foods contain sulfites. And why do they have to warn people? Because some people are super allergic to sulfites. Well, why did they put something on the food that can kill their clients, their customers? The reason they do it is if you put a sulfite, so you have avocado or apple slices, if you sprinkle some sulfites on it, it keeps it from oxidizing or going dark. Like avocados go black, they look mucky, they're still okay to eat, but they don't look appetizing. Apple slices go dark, brown, they're still okay to eat, they just don't look good. Well, restaurants are in the business for the money. And so you have a longer shelf life out there if you sprinkle some sulfites around. But then you got to warn people so you don't kill anybody. So, sulfites are used that way. Here's sulfates. This is nitrite. What would this one be then?
Nitrate.
Nitrate. Exactly. Nitrate. And this is the more common one. Just like this is more common, this is more common. Just like the higher acids were the more common. Now, what are these things used for? Nitrites and nitrates. The next time you buy packaged luncheon meats, if you'll read on there, it sometimes will say, this contains nitrites and or nitrates. And it's a preservative, okay, to have, again, money, longer shelf life. However, there's been controversy for at least 30 years about the use of nitrites and nitrates, because when they hit the acid in our stomach, they can turn to nitrosamines, which are carcinogenic. And so they don't know, is this going to be a problem? Well, they've been thinking about it for 30 years, and it doesn't seem to have occurred as a big problem. A lot of times when you find out, this is a carcinogen, you don't see the evidence of that for 20, 30 years down the line. They are still using that in the luncheon meats, and their argument is this: it's better to put a little of those in and preserve the meat, because if the meat went bad, more people would die of food poisoning than the slight chance that 1 out of 10,000 might get cancer from it. So it's a risk analysis, which is the better. You may fall on one side of that argument or the other, but food industry has fallen on the side of, let's be sure the meat is good to eat right now today.